All right, so today's episode of the podcast, Michelle Tam is with me, and I mean, you know her as Nom Nom Paleo. I feel like not everybody knows your name, Michelle. Is that frustrating?
It is super frustrating, and people come up to me and say, "Are you the Nom Nom
Oh
person?"
God.
Or like, "Are you Nom Nom Paleo?" I'm like, "No, I'm Michelle." But
Right, exactly.
yes.
Like that's my brand, but I'm actually a person. And of course, you are the co-creator of the Savor award-winning food blog Nom Nom Paleo, and together with your adorable husband Henry Fong, you have produced a two-time Webby award-winning cookbook app. You authored three New York Times best-selling cookbooks and have been nominated for a James Beard Award. That's a lot of accomplishments. And the most recent book is Nom Nom Paleo Let's Go. I love that you have those two boys who eat your food much of the time and tell you what's good and what isn't. And that they're both so entrepreneurial, I think is very cute. And then you're also a chemist, but not any, you're a retired chemist, right? Oh, no, retired pharmacist.
Yes, I'm a retired drug dealer,
That's
and
what
I
I
did
meant
that.
by chemist,
Yes.
because I was thinking like Walter White. I was
Well,
thinking
yeah, and
chemistry
I
teacher.
think in England they're called chemists.
Okay. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I know there's I know what your job was and that we've
Yes.
talked via DM about you giving up your license. And I was very upset about it.
No, I still have an inactive license. So I
Okay.
listened to your advice, and
Okay.
I continue to pay
Good.
even though I haven't used it.
Yeah. I don't think you're ever using it again, but it's sort of like why I keep my legal, like my law license in good standing because I'm like, why not? It's annoying.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's like $300 or $400 every 2 years or something. I don't even know. It just comes and I pay it and I just go fine. And then every 2 years I pay $200 for the continuing legal education,
Yeah.
which does nothing for me, but I
Yeah.
do it anyway because I'm like, I might, if I went through the schooling and passed the bar, I might as well,
Yeah, and I
you
think as
know.
a child of immigrants, I feel like I should always have
Yes.
some sort of parachute plan. And
I
so,
don't think you need it. I
yeah.
don't. I don't think you need it. Your husband is a lawyer
Yes.
and an artist because he's the one responsible for the adorable, like cutesy drawings, right?
Yeah, he does all the photography, all the cartoons. I think again, as a child of immigrants, he was never pushed to kind of pursue his artistic side, even though his
Yeah.
dad would brag to everybody, "Look, he's drawing these perfect circles at age 2, but there's no way this is something you can do for a living."
Yeah.
And so he ended up going to law school. He's still a lawyer, but on the side, he just loves designing and being creative. And so I lucked out in that I have that in my house.
What do you two do for fun? Because I feel like both of you are super ambitious and have very strong work ethics.
You know, okay, I think we do have strong work ethics, but I was listening to you talk about what you kind of do in your free time, and I think you said you worked hard and then you just hung out with your family, and that's
Yeah.
kind of
It's
what
really,
I
that's it.
feel that we do. Like, we just hang
Yeah.
out. I love hanging out with my kids,
Yeah, me
and we
too.
have a small group of friends that we hang out with, like, all the time, but we just, like, go out to eat, or we have takeout together, we go to the movies a lot, we watch a ton of TV,
Yeah.
so it's just a lot of, kinda hibernating together,
I
and
think, yeah, I think that's probably one of the reasons why you and I have always connected on social media because it's that similar, it's like a vibe. Like I just get it. Like you love your family, you
Mhm.
love your work, and there's not that much room in a way for much else. Like I've always felt that as a working mother, that like the work, not that it's an indulgence, like I need to work, right? So I always,
Mhm.
I need to work. So I don't mean it like, oh, it's a luxury. No, it's not. My job, whatever.
Yeah, we
But
gotta pay the bills, we
gotta
gotta
pay
pay our
the,
mortgage.
always got to pay the bills.
Yeah.
Always got to pay the, got to pay the law school. Like the law
Yes.
school that your husband went to, my son goes to, they don't take you for free. Like they don't
Yeah.
do that sort of thing over there. And so, yeah, no, we pay for the things. But because I feel like as a working mother, I'm working. And so that takes me away from my availability for my kids or has that. Like I never felt like I had, like I wanted to do the girls' nights out. Like I
Mhm.
felt like that time was taken up by work and the rest of the time was going to be with my family or my husband. Like that was just
Yeah, I whenever I follow you and I kind of follow kind of what you've been doing over the last few years. I think of you as just like being me in just a few years
Yeah,
because I
I
see your
agree.
kids are a little bit older
Yeah, yeah.
and, you're going through kind of like similar hormonal things that I'm going through now.
So fun, Michelle.
So I know, I know. And so it's just like, oh, this is just kind of my peek
Yeah.
into what's to come in just a couple years.
Which I like, which is what I want. That's totally what I want to do. Like my whole thing, and I think similarly with yours, when you talk about creating a recipe, when it works or when it doesn't, like I just want to be direct. I don't want anyone to come to my page and for me to put up something that isn't going to be the way it is. Like it isn't easy being 52. It isn't
Yeah,
easy when your kids leave the nest. None of it's easy. I mean,
yeah.
but it's beautiful, and I wouldn't trade any of it. But to say there's not bumps along the way, or that my body isn't behaving in a very foreign manner, how does that help anybody? It makes other people feel crazy. Like I don't want to be a constant stream of gaslighting. I want to kind of be the place where someone goes, "Oh, thank God she just said it."
Yeah, no, if anything, I totally admire how you are so raw and
Yeah,
honest about everything and about what you're going through,
yeah.
and, like, I'm so sorry about your father,
Thank you.
um, but it's just all the things, and I see it, and you are an inspiration to me, like,
Oh,
when I
Michelle,
see
you're an
you doing
inspiration to
No,
me.
it's
Yeah,
true, when I see you doing your 10,000 steps, like,
yeah. Every day.
I have all the things kind of I have everything except for exercise in line, I feel, for
I can
myself.
help you with that
I
because you're.
know, and you
Yeah,
have actually because I see how consistent you are about exercise, and then I listen to Peter Attia
I love him.
and Andrew Huberman
Yeah.
and they always talk about how exercise is the thing. You can't even though people say food is so important, exercise is really the thing that will make you healthy and help you with longevity. And so just 8 weeks ago, I signed up for a gym and a trainer again, and I'm doing, 8 to 12,000 steps a day on
Oh,
top
that's
of that.
great. Oh, that's
And
great.
so I just
Yeah.
wanted to say that you trucking on is inspiring to me.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think for you, because I know your story and I want you to get into it and give it from your perspective, but from following you, your health wasn't great. You knew how to change your food. And then you changed your food and that improved sort of your baseline numbers. And then I remember you talking about how you would just rebound for 15 minutes a day. And that was kind of your workout. And so I love that you've made sort kind of the jump into more exercise, but you realize that Dr. Attia and Andrew Huberman say you just have to move. It's a
Yeah.
consistent movement. So 10,000 steps, so it's an arbitrary number, it
Yeah.
covers you in terms of movement. And if you could change the way you think about it to just wanting to do it versus having to do it, it'll really help you a lot. And food is the most important for weight loss. It's
Mhm.
just not the most important for
Health, overall
health.
health. Yeah.
Correct. I mean, it's
Exactly.
important like nutritionally, but not for what we're talking about, that other piece that you need to move your body.
Yeah, if anything, I think when I kind of discovered paleo and I started paying attention
Yeah,
to
so talk
how
about this when that happened. What motivated you to get into paleo food, paleo cooking, and turned you into a James Beard nominated food person? You weren't a chef, you're a
No,
pharmacist.
I was someone who loved eating and loved food.
Yeah.
And I was a nutrition and food science major as an undergrad, but that was in the 90s. And so what was healthy in the 90s is very different from
Yeah.
what's healthy now.
So different.
Because back then it was all about like no fat, all whole grains, all carbs basically. And it was like and I would say, okay. And I remember also because I was a food science major, they were all talking about these new discoveries like Olestra, like where they
Mhm.
would replace the fat in like potato chips with
Cause
something
diarrhea.
exactly, and
Yeah.
like something that wouldn't get absorbed, and so it would go right through you, and literally the food would go right through you as diarrhea. But at the time, I was like, "Wow, this sounds amazing! Like better living through chemistry. Like we can save the world." And I would just kind of do what people told me was healthy, but I didn't think about how I felt. And
Right.
like the whole time, I felt terrible. Like I had all these aches and pains, and I actually think I have celiac. Um,
Mm.
But I didn't realize it because I thought everybody had the same GI stuff, had all this, all the stuff that I did, but nobody talks about bowel movements and that kind of
It's
stuff or
not
what's
sexy.
normal. It's
Yeah.
not sexy, and you just assume because you have it, everybody else has it.
Right.
And so when I discovered paleo and I started eating like more whole foods and I started cooking my own meals, I was like, wow, I feel great. And I actually saw a big difference because I was working night shift as a hospital pharmacist. And so I was getting jet lag every other week,
Mm.
but I had so much more energy because of this new way of eating. But it isn't so much like people are like, "Oh, so is paleo what I should be doing?" I'm like, "No, I think people should just find out what works for them
Yes.
and just pay attention to how food makes you feel."
Yes.
Um, but I felt like I had this kind of new lease on life where I just was like, "Wow, I like how I feel and I can actually feel good every morning and have energy and not be achy and have all sorts of GI stuff." And so that kind of led me down the path of, you know, figuring out other ways to kind of optimize my life. So I was like, oh, well, after working nights for, I think I worked nights for 12 years. So I really
Mm.
messed up my body, I think, with my messing up my circadian rhythm. And
Yeah, I'd
and night
say.
shift really is, I think the World Health Organization calls it a carcinogen.
It
Just
it is a
working
cur
night
it
shift.
is a
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the ways people are tortured is to not
Yeah.
allow them to sleep. We actually fundamentally need sleep to survive, and
Yeah,
when you
like,
screw
I
with
know
your
so many
circadian
night
rhythm,
shift
it's not good.
workers,
Yeah.
especially women who have, like, breast cancer and all sorts of different cancers, and it just messes up your body, and so then I started concentrating on fixing my sleep and controlling stress and kind of just learning all this stuff, and so now exercise is my newest thing where I'm like, "Okay, as a 48-year-old woman, I need to exercise." It's like I'm gonna lose muscle mass, just because my hormones are messed up. Like I
Yeah.
I need to do this.
Your brain's gonna feel better too. That's
Yeah.
the thing, and just what you talked about with, like, how you felt that something must have did you stumble across a Whole30 book? Like, something must have tipped you off
So
to
Henry
try
was the
it.
one who discovered paleo first.
Okay.
And so he started doing P90X. So we both had like we
Great.
both we were raising 2 small children,
Yeah.
and before that we had been going to the gym and kind of eating what we thought was healthy, but then for like 3, 4 years we did nothing and we were like sloths. And
Sure.
when the kids were finally, sleeping through the night, we're like,
People.
"Oh, we got to exercise or do something." And so he started doing P90X, which are these DVDs you can buy, and we were
Yeah.
doing it in our home gym. And I bought like Chalene Extreme, like Chalene Johnson had her own little workout. And so he started blogging about it to keep himself accountable. And he would look up the people in P90X. And one of them was Mark Sisson, because I think Mark
Ah,
Sisson at the
yeah.
time helped them with supplement or
I
something.
don't know, he was like the father of paleo or something.
Yeah, and so then Henry was like, "Oh, what's Mark Sisson doing now?" And so he looked him up, and he was talking about some sort of primal way of eating,
Yep.
and was like, "Oh, I'm gonna try this." And I was like, "That sounds crazy. Like, what do you mean? Like, you shouldn't be eating like whole grains or like red meat is okay. Like, those are all things that we haven't had on our table in a long time." But he tried it and he felt great and he got a six pack right away. And I was like, fuck you."
Yes, well, of course. I mean, that's just the classic.
Yeah.
The husband goes on a
Yeah.
diet, lose 10 pounds in a week, and you lose one. And
Or
you're like,
nothing, because I was
right.
just exercising really hard and then I was so hungry all the time and I was just eating carbs, carbs, carbs like
Of
all
course.
the time. And like I think I had no protein really in my diet.
Fair enough.
And yeah, and then I was like, well, maybe I'll just try this. And then when I tried it, I just felt so much better. Um, and I think it's just because I was eating like not processed stuff. Like I was eating all this healthy processed food, or what was called healthy.
Yep.
And then when I just started eating kind of real food, I was like, wow, I feel so much better. And I
Hmm.
realized certain foods actually did make me feel bad because I do think I have celiac.
And you never got tested? You never went for the
No. Well,
endoscopy
I
to
took it
see?
out. I totally took it out, and then
Yeah.
I did get tested for the gene, so I do have the celiac gene.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, and so does a lot of people in my family
Oh,
apparently,
then you're
so
definitely celiac.
yeah, except they don't give you the definitive
Unless they did a
celiac
biopsy of the belly.
ex oh, yeah, unless you destroy your small intestine. So
Oh,
that
no
you have
need.
yeah, you have to eat gluten for, like, 2 months, and so you destroy your small intestine, and then when they do the endoscopy, they can say, "Oh, like, yes, you have
No, no,
celiac."
no, 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 no. Let's just act as if. It's good enough.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So now you start eating this way, which for people listening, so paleo is essentially no grains really, but it's you get to have some potato, right? And you get to
Yeah.
have
I mean,
how do
I'm
you
probably
explain
the
it?
most relaxed paleo person on the internet. I
Okay.
just think of it as eating whole unprocessed foods and avoiding foods that make you feel sick, and everybody's different. But I think the technical like, when I
Yeah,
first started
technically what is it?
paleo,
Yeah.
like, no grains, no refined sugar, no vegetable oils, that kinda stuff, and yes, you can be super strict, but you have to live life. So I think you have to make paleo work for you.
Yes.
And so that's what I encourage people to do.
I mean, I think most people benefit from fewer processed foods
Mhm,
in their diets, but yeah, I think everybody like I don't eat meat as you know, or
mhm,
I eat very limited amounts of fish as you know, based on
mhm,
your creating a recipe that was Jenny friendly. Uh so yeah, so for me it would never work to be just straight paleo
mhm,
as those people intended, but for sure I feel better when I eat fewer bagels. I mean, that's
mhm.
just most people would feel better, I think, eating fewer bagels.
But they are delicious.
Oh yeah,
I do miss a
toasted with
good bagel.
butter. Toasted with butter. I've tried like all those not real bagels and I'm like,
Yeah,
just what's the point? Like what's the
yeah.
point? It just doesn't do it. But you come up with the Nom Nom Paleo cookbooks really incredibly delicious meals and swaps. And I think the trick is, Michelle, that you don't really do swaps. You just make really good food that happens to be paleo friendly.
Well, thank you. I think sometimes it's just too hard. Like when people are like, "How can you make a mac and cheese that's paleo?" I'm like, "You can't. Like you
Right? I
can't
mean,
you
what?
no. And why would you, right?"
Right.
So I do think there are things that are naturally delicious that you can kind of like switch a few things and it'll still be as tasty. And it just so happens to be, gluten free, grain free,
Yeah.
refined sugar free, but it still tastes good. Because ultimately, I love food and I love eating delicious food. And so that's what I want to do. I just want to eat delicious food and continue feeling good, for as long as
Yeah.
I can.
Yeah. So, how did you realize that what you were cooking was going to hit, that people were going to want to use your recipes? Like, what made you decide to start blogging and then wind up with this? Because I think it's both how you present it. The reason I like to consume what you do is because you make it look easy, you make it look appealing, and I think it's going to taste really good. But you're in your kitchen, so you're actually tasting the stuff before you're putting it out to all of us. So how did you know? How'd you know?
Well, I didn't. When I started, I didn't think anyone was gonna read it. Like, literally started it as a Tumblr blog, um,
Wow.
and I just was putting up stuff and I was working nights at the time, so I was just putting up stuff. I'm like, "Oh," it was really hard for me to kind of figure out what to take to work or what to cook, so I'm just gonna put up, like, what I cooked at night. So I would take these terrible pictures on my old iPhone
Yep.
with terrible lighting, and it would be super fast because 'cause I'd do it right before I went to work at night, and I also was swearing all the time on the blog because I didn't think anyone was reading it, and I was just like, "Well," and I couldn't swear at home because I had 2 small children,
Amazing.
and then I think and it's also timing. I think this all happened when paleo was getting popular, and so then
Right.
people were reading my blog, and so Henry was like, "Hey, there's actually quite a few people looking at your blog. Maybe you should work on your pictures and stuff." And I was like, "I can't really fix those things. So if you want to help me, you can jump on board." So then he started helping me with pictures. And then pretty soon I realized I couldn't just it was really hard to go out to eat paleo. So I had to start cooking my own meals. And then I couldn't just take someone's recipe and just change a few things. Like that's not how you create recipes. So then I just started having to create my own recipes. But I think what it is I am like a super picky, lazy cook. And so everything I create, I think of myself as kind of that person. So
Mhm.
I need to have foolproof recipes that are pretty simple. I need to have step-by-step pictures so I know exactly what's happening. And like in our cookbooks, then we have like, cute little cartoons,
So
like
cute.
cheering everyone on.
Yeah.
And so I'm just always thinking like what would get me to make this recipe? And then I think because so many people make my recipes as soon as I make them,
Yeah.
like they have to work. And so I'm
Yeah.
always testing and testing. And I think part of my, pharmacy and kind of science background. Like I'm very
Well, this
good.
is a thing I was going to say. You might be a lazy cook, but you do have the science background. So you would probably know, like, from just reading a little bit, like what arrowroot might do to a dish, what gelatin might do to a dish to replace, I don't know
Yeah,
what. Like,
so my food science background, that does help a lot. Like,
yeah.
because there were a lot of things, like, because part of our major was kind of learning how cooking is a science, and like when you sear meat, you're denaturing protein, and like what happens when you do this, and this is a colloid or suspension or all those things, like that actually helps.
Yeah.
And just taking all the chemistry classes also, like any chemistry experiment is kind of like a recipe because it has to be
Right.
able to be replicated. You have to read through everything and do it in the right order, and you have to
Right.
measure things properly. So those are kind of my baseline. But I think kind of the overriding factor is just I love food and it has to taste good. And I'm so picky about that I just make sure that it passes my taste buds.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and hopefully then people will like it.
I think you've said like there's like an egg foo young recipe, maybe that's super popular.
Mm. Yeah,
And
that's an old one.
right. But I think people love that one. Maybe I just like, because I was like egg. I like egg and I'll eat anything egg. I have so many eggs in my fridge right now. Eggs make
Yeah.
me happy. Um, yeah, it's like a very, for me, benign protein and I can just, it just works.
Yeah.
You've made a rice recipe that I've tried, a fried rice recipe, but it's not rice, it's cauliflower.
Yep. Cauliflower, for a while, that was like the magical vegetable, right? They're like, if cauliflower can be turned into pizza, you can do anything.
Anything. And you can climb Mount
Yes.
Kilimanjaro if you
Right.
can turn cauliflower into pizza.
Right.
Yeah, and sometimes rice is one of those foods is very hard for me to eat an appropriate amount. It's
Oh, same. Totally same for
it's
me.
so weird because I don't know what it is about. Like I can look, not every day. Some days I can't stop with bread. Some days the nibble bread's out of control and then I just
Mhm.
have to put the bread away or get rid of it or give it, I don't know, but to someone. But rice is one of those things that I have a very hard, like I can eat 3 cups of rice and
Me
not
too. I
blink.
used to as a kid, I would just eat bowls and bowls of
It's
rice, and
delicious.
there's something for me, like, because I grew up on rice, but I know because I wore a continuous glucose monitor for, like, 3 months that rice and rice products like rice noodles,
Oh,
it spikes my blood sugar,
it's
it
so
makes
good
me
though.
super sleepy, it literally makes me have, like, over 200
Oh,
in my blood
wow. That's not
sugar
good. Right.
for a long, long time, like,
Yeah.
for a couple hours, and so I've learned that, and do you follow the glucose goddess
I
on
have. I know
Instagram?
the glucose. She's been on the show. Yeah. She's
Yeah,
great.
and so
Yeah.
I follow her little hacks, so if I am gonna eat rice, I eat it after I do her apple cider vinegar shot before my meal,
And it
then
works
I eat my vegetables first, and then my protein and fat, and then I'll eat a little bit of rice or something carby at the end.
and it
Uh,
works.
and it works, like, because then I'm full and I don't eat as much as I would, and I think your blood sugar spike is less than it would.
Yeah.
Um, and then I've been making, like this well, you could probably do a vegetable broth rice,
I know. What,
but
have you make it bone broth?
yes, and so
Mm-hmm.
that also adds a little protein.
It's good.
Um, yeah, and I think, like, if you If you cool your rice overnight in the fridge, the resistant
That's
starch is
better. Yes,
also
that's
yes.
a real
So there's
thing. What
all
yeah,
sorts of little hacks
hacks
that,
make it
you
better.
know
What about soy? Why is soy so is it because of the gluten in soy sauce, or is it soy itself that you found, at least for you, maybe an inflammatory response because it's
so
coconut aminos and there's other things that you use in place of soy sauce?
yeah, so I think soy has been it was, like, totally demonized for a long time.
Yeah, it was.
I definitely don't think again, I think my stance on a lot of things have changed a lot. Like, I think
Healthy.
if you like, I think some delicious organic tofu is
Mhm.
perfectly fine. I
Yep.
think a artisanal fabulous soy sauce is fine for most people unless you're celiac because that does have wheat that's
Yep.
fermented with it.
Go with tamari.
Um, I think if anything, it's just there's so many kind of, there's so many soy products that are so super processed, and then there's all sorts of other stuff that goes into those products that make those foods unhealthy, but I really don't think soy is really as terrible as people say.
At the time,
I'm
right, I think
yeah,
they've softened a bit on it because they know that it was kind of yeah, it was sort of
and
over
there's
the and
all
if you
sorts of
yeah,
fermented soy products that are really great for you and super nutrient dense,
yeah,
like natto and all these other kind of um, fermented soybean products that, Japanese people and Asian people have been eating for millennia.
and doing
So
just fine.
yeah, I think it's totally, I mean, again, I totally think you should find what works for you. Like my aunts have been
I
Buddhist
believe that.
vegetarians like for their whole lives and
Yeah,
they're super healthy and they eat a lot of soy products.
and it works for them.
Yeah, it totally works for them.
And so and your kids have gotten on board with this. I wanna talk about the kids because
Well, I don't know, they're totally on board,
well,
but
this is what I wanna know because in my house, like, my daughter had food allergies, still has food allergies, but I think she's grown out of so I don't really trust the whole grown out. I'm too afraid. I'm
yeah.
definitely very, very afraid for her to ever eat a peanut or a we have to do that whole challenge thing in a doctor's office.
Mhm.
But she would like was a much more robust eater and adventurous eater than my son was. So he really enjoyed a life of chicken nuggets and frozen french fries. I'm not a great mother. But she would eat
Dude,
if
we do that in our
I
house. We call that
whatever.
a swag meal. The kids call
Exactly.
it a
Like
swag meal. They
oh,
love it.
good. Okay. So for you though, you're cooking this delicious, like I dream of somebody in my kitchen cooking paleo, just healthy food for me. So I don't have to think about it. And then it's yummy and I have leftovers. But for the kids, they want pizza or they want a burger. Or they want something that pasta, noodles, and butter. Like they don't want that. So your kids, though, they are on like they'll eat it.
They will eat it because that's what I'm cooking for dinner, and they're lazy, so they're not gonna make something else for themselves. So they're eating it because that's what I'm putting on the table, and they don't wanna make their own dinner. Um,
Right. Okay.
realistically,
Yeah.
like, my kids like, I cook a lot because that's what I'm doing all the time is I'm recipe testing, and people always think it's so glamorous. I was like, "No, my family is so sick of so many because 'cause I'm repeating dishes over and over
Of
again to test
course.
them,
Yeah.
and so, you know, it's not as glamorous as people think living in my household, but I've also raised my kids to, hopefully fly the coop and be able to make healthy choices.
On their
And
own.
on their own. And especially when we're out to eat, like when we go out to a restaurant, I let them order whatever they want. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
say, "Oh, you have to eat whatever." Ollie is also celiac like me.
Okay.
Um, and so, yeah, we also have the gene, we have the same symptoms, and so he knows not to eat gluten because 'cause he'll feel terrible. But Owen will totally order pizza or something else. But I have appealed to they're both teenage boys, and so I have appealed to their vanity. And so they know that actually when they eat, what I'm cooking that isn't like super inflammatory or high sugar, their skin is better. They're not breaking
Right.
out as much. And when they like eat a ton of pizza and like chips and all sorts of refined stuff, they'll start breaking out. And so
Yeah.
I've tried to kind of, teach them kind of cause and effect but I've also taught them that food is to be enjoyed. And that's why we're always, I mean, they know whenever we travel or we go to a new city or wherever we are, I'm deciding where we eat because I just love eating and exploring good food. And I do it within my parameters because I know I have to be gluten free, but we are going balls out.
So
And
fun.
so they, like I don't like we I always joke like we totally the only thing I spend money on is food. Like we have this beater Camry and I wear like clothes that's like
Whatever.
20
It's the
years
thing
old.
that, but that's the thing that excites you. So
Yeah.
why not?
Yeah.
I get it. But which son is the one who is making food and delivering it?
My older son. So he's
Okay.
the one that has no restrictions.
Okay. So he was making what was he delivering? Because I this a while ago you
Oh,
were posting this.
he was making spam masubi, or
That's right.
I don't know if
Okay.
that's
And
the
I
correct
bought one of those
pronunciation.
masubi things. Those I bought off Amazon. It's like green and you press down
Yeah,
the
it
rice in it,
basically
but not
it's
with
something.
spam for me. Yeah.
Yeah, if you make it in it's a Hawaiian kind of cross-cultural food, where it's like you have steamed rice, a piece of spam that's been, like, sautéed in some sort of teriyaki sauce, and then there's, like, a little bit of seaweed that wraps it, but it's like a handheld, tasty treat, and so he's loved spam musubi ever since he was young, and because he was cooking it in my kitchen, we're like, "Let's make it gluten-free and grain-free." And so he's like, "I'd like to do something, during the pandemic to help other people." So he was just selling it in our city and we were donating the proceeds to you know, uh, I think a different charity every month. He would pick something
So
that
nice.
like a lot of teachers would buy it, and so we'd go deliver it to like teachers' homes and then families around the neighborhood.
And did you do it actually like grain free? Did you do it without rice?
No, we did it with rice. It was, like,
Okay.
gluten-free. It was
Just
gluten-free.
gluten free. Okay, but
It
not
was
grain free. I was
gluten-free
gonna
and
say
soy-free because we use, like, coconut amino
coconut
teriyaki sauce.
aminos.
Yeah.
So when you do these swaps,
Mhm.
how does that like? Because I know you do that. You do the swap of the coconut aminos or use almond in the place of
Mhm.
flour, or things like arrowroot, or when you don't use dairy, do you use nutritional yeast? Is that okay for
Yeah, I use
paleo?
nutritional yeast I love, yes. That
Okay.
is, like, a thing from the vegan, food scene that I think is a fabulous crossover food.
Yeah, because can give something a cheesy flavor without cheese.
Yes, cheesy flavor, and it's really nutrient dense. It's got, like, all these B vitamins and stuff, and
Yeah.
it's
So it
I
is
love
good
it.
for you. Okay.
Yeah.
So I loved when he was doing because I always have like a fantasy that I'll be able to because it's really for me just a vehicle to get rice, which so I shouldn't even learn. I shouldn't have even bought the musubi maker because like I don't really need that but that's always what appeals to me like that or the what are these onigiri those when they're the
Oh, yeah.
triangle? Oh my
Yes.
God. I
And they
used
can
to
be stuffed with all sorts of little things, and normally the stuffing is
yeah.
like a teaspoon.
It's a teaspoon. It's a
Yeah,
teaspoon of
yeah,
like spicy or sour pickle
yeah,
or like a Japanese pickle or like shrimp tempura. Like that kind of fish I'll eat because it's
yeah,
not really fish. Like it's candy. It's
yeah.
the candy fish I can eat, but it's so good. The rice, it's just mushy and so things like rice vinegar are okay. But if they have sugar, no?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think a technically paleo person would say no to all those things, but for me, I'm like, "No, I think rice
Some is okay.
vinegar
Yeah.
is totally
Yeah.
fine." For
Yeah.
me, like, I think everyone should figure out, like, what their kind of breaks are. So for me, it's gluten, and I have to watch my blood sugar because I
Yep.
definitely have I think working nights kind of messed up my blood sugar
Whole thing.
regulation,
Yeah.
um, and I do have type 2 diabetes in my family.
So you have to be careful. Fair.
Yeah, I do have to be careful, I think, but I do think there are ways to kind of pay attention and, you know,
Still
even
enjoy your food.
yes,
You also use things like coconut sugar or maple syrup. Is there really a difference in how
than regular sugar?
yeah.
Uh, I don't think so. I think
I
sugar
don't
is
think so
sugar is
either.
sugar.
I think
Yeah,
so too. Whenever I
yeah,
see recipes and I know it's sticking on brand and I
mhm.
get it, but I'm like, I don't really know that the coconut sugar is that much different
No.
than having regular
Honestly, I
sugar,
don't.
but
I
yeah,
don't think so
yeah,
either. I think if anything, when you go, paleo or you start eating kind of more low carb,
yeah,
your taste buds do recalibrate a little bit, and so
absolutely,
things
absolutely,
are not you don't need things as sweet as before.
right.
And so if anything, my recipes probably are just lower sugar, but you
Which
could
is
use
great.
regular sugar. Yeah.
Yeah, which is great. The newest book was Nom Nom Paleo Let's Go, and these are just quick on the go meals.
Yeah, they're on the go, but some of them are actually fancier meals. Like, we created it during pandemic, and so it really was just like, these are foods that we make every day, and there was tons of cooking fatigue because I was cooking for everybody and everybody was home, and we were trying to create this cookbook, but then I also wanted it to include like celebratory foods
Yeah,
because, there's everyday food and there's weekend and party food, and that's all part of the your life. And so that's what we kind of wanted to put in this latest book. And it was totally a love story to growing up in the San Francisco Bay Area, surrounded by all these immigrant cultures and being raised by, my immigrant parents, but also being an American. And so
yes.
it's a kind of a reflection of all the foods. I mean, it's a very selfish cookbook,
It's
I think, is
not
the way to put
because
it.
no, because again, your recipes, for people listening, Michelle and Henry, the two of you, you're very technically aware. So you're not doing anything that isn't going to work and you really care. So I don't know. I think it's all just I think I can trust what you tell me to do. If I actually follow your recipe, it's going to come out right.
Well, thank you. That is
Right.
actually my number one goal, is I
Yeah.
always want the recipe to work the first time. Because I don't want I because I've been in that position. I have, like, hundreds of cookbooks where I've bought all these expensive ingredients, and I've followed the recipe to the T, and
Yeah.
people tell me that all the time, but I was like, Did you really?" But as someone who creates recipes and is very adept at measuring things very precisely,
Of
I'll
course.
follow something to the T, and then it'll be messed up, and I'm super mad and frustrated, and I don't wanna cook again. And so I don't want that experience for people who use my recipes,
Sure.
because cooking really is, I always joke about this, but I think of cooking like a habit, like flossing or
Yes.
like doing your
Yes.
taxes. There are
Yeah.
things you don't wanna do, but you have to
You
do
have
it,
to do them.
and it's like
Yes.
exercise. See, exercise is now in that for me.
For
It's
you.
something
Yes.
you just have to do,
Even though you don't want to.
um,
Yeah.
and you have to embrace it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that's exactly right. What did you guys do in the sourdough craze?
Oh, I liked watching everybody make all the sourdough.
You just couldn't do it.
I just couldn't do it. I wish I could. But I can't. And
You can't. Yeah.
I'm happy for everybody who was able to, but I
Listen,
wasn't
it
able
was
to.
no great shakes. I did the banana bread and I did the whatever I hoarded food. I did the whole thing.
Yes.
Then I started with the sourdough and I made my own starter and I was feeding and removing and at one point I had I think 6 mason jars on the counter. And my son and no bread. 6 mason jars and no bread. My son looked at me, and my daughter's cheering me on, like, you'll make it someday. And my son looked at me and was like, Mom, this one you have to quit. And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, You're just never making sourdough bread. There's a lot of things that you can do. This isn't one of them. Let it go.
So
And I
you
was
never
like,
made bread? You just made the starter?
I just kept making the starter. And I would
Oh, that's so
like,
funny.
it's so funny because I'm so not science based. And so
Yeah.
I would try really hard to understand what I was doing. And like the instructions were like, remove some starter, put it in a new jar, feed the old jar.
Right.
There's the mother, it's bubbling. And truly had
I
a
bet you made a
row of
lot of
these.
friends because everyone wants that starter. That starter is
And
worth a
it's
lot of money.
and it's funky and
Yeah.
smelly and it just feels like and I love sourdough. I just couldn't pull the trigger. It's one of my character defects.
No, well,
It's
dude,
fine.
yes, you have so many. I always think, gosh, you accomplish so much. And you
Oh,
like work-wise, I feel like you
yeah.
accomplished so much, and then you put out so much love to your dogs
I
and to
love
your
my dogs.
family,
Yeah,
and I'm always
yeah.
like, "Geez, I could be doing more than just
No,
watching
you
these
can't
Netflix
see.
series."
I actually think that, like, I look at you and I think, and that's the problem as humans or as women, or maybe as women who maybe there are some women who don't care. I don't even know. I don't really know. I know that if you're built a certain way and have like I was type B, I thought my whole life
Mhm.
until I wasn't. And that's fucked up. Like I was not somebody who cared about accomplishing or doing, at least not consciously. And
Mhm.
now at 52, I do have this feeling like I got to make something of myself. I got to
Yeah.
do something and do it well. And then I'm like, well, how did that happen? And I don't compare and despair. Like I don't look
Yeah.
at you and think like, oh man, I wish I could have the 3 cookbooks that are James Beard New York Times. But
No, same
no,
with me.
like
I
I look at you and I
actually
think you're amazing and like
that's
I'm
the
so
same
happy
for
you
me.
exist, right?
You inspire me.
Right.
And it's
That's how I
not
feel.
like, "Oh, I can't do this." I'm like, "Wow, if she's doing this, this means that
That's
I
right.
can take a few minutes."
That's right.
And I actually am this close to getting your little treadmill thing that you
Oh, you need
came and
just get
talked
it
about.
at
I
this
know
point. Do you have an actual treadmill?
I don't. We have a rower
All right,
and
stop,
we have
hold up, hold up, hold up. 3 New York Times best-selling cookbooks. I know you've got college-bound children. I know that you don't want to take money and throw it out the window. I get that. I really, really get that. I'm in that space. One finished college, as you know, one in law school.
yeah.
There's not a lot of play money. In fact, there's none. Like every day it's about the downside. Like we're not and I get it. So I'm not spending any money for you, but if you can do it, you should get yourself a treadmill first. And then that
Mm,
little thing gets second. The mini elliptical is a great item because you get on it and you can email me at justjennypod@gmail.com and great. I'll tell you how to get it, but
yeah.
you can move it around your house and it's like $100. So it's
Yeah.
not an investment. It's truly not like a real investment and works. It doesn't need electricity and it works. It's a great little piece of equipment to get your
Mhm.
steps done. But the treadmill's like my friend,
Mm,
and I've used a treadmill consistently for 12 years, 15. I mean, treadmill, you get on, you watch a movie. I mean, I can watch it on the mini elliptical too, but I
yeah.
think you should invest in a treadmill for you.
I know we once had a treadmill. Like, we've
Yeah.
actually had a bunch of equipment because Henry's actually
Yeah.
very good about exercise, and we've had all the things through the years.
Yeah.
I think the one he doesn't like clutter, so he may, like, push back against that, and the fact that I live in California where we can actually go outside and it's sunny,
Yeah.
I actually should go outside
Oh,
and
well,
go
go
on a walk.
walk. Yeah,
Yeah.
I put podcast like that's why I love Dr. Peter Attia's podcast so much is because it's 2 hours. So I
Yes.
put that on and then I feel smart when I'm walking listening to
Or
it.
I feel so dumb
That
because I'm
too.
like,
Well, of course you do.
I
That's
have to
right.
listen to this again because I do not understand this conversation.
I feel a combination of smart and dumb
Yeah.
with both his podcast and Kara Swisher, both of
Oh,
them.
yeah.
I listen and I'm like, look at
No,
me
we were just
listening
listening
to
to
the
Kara Swisher today
yeah,
because I dropped off our car. We were listening to her.
oh, she's
I
the
love
best.
her.
I know, me
Yeah.
too, because she makes you understand maybe the stuff that you wouldn't ordinarily pay attention to. I don't know, something about her
Or
delivery.
she tells me what I should pay attention to.
Yes, I love
And
that.
I mean, Twitter is like I used to love Twitter, and I
I
still am
know.
on Twitter just
I
to
know.
watch the train wreck that's happening now.
Yeah, same.
But I love reading her takes on everything that's happening
Mm-hmm.
because she's so smart and she
So
has
smart.
such the inside scoop on
She
everything that's
does. Yeah.
happening
Yeah.
that
Did
yeah.
you go to post.news yet?
I'm on the wait list.
I'm in.
Oh, well,
I'm
no,
on it.
I'm not in yet.
I got it. When I got the email, I was like, I've arrived. I have
Does
like
it
four.
show up in your spam or it
I
shows up in
it
your
didn't. No, I saw it in my inbox, and
oh,
I had like, and I have all of maybe 10 followers. I mean, I'm a loser on the post.news, but I don't care. I want to try to make it like
yeah.
fun for myself. I don't. I like the layout. So hopefully I'll see. I don't think I have invites yet, but if I do, I will. You'll be
Yeah,
my
send
first
me
send.
one.
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't think
because
I
I
have one.
never used Twitter as a way to share information. I
Yeah,
just used it like I
to
followed a
learn.
bunch of
Yeah.
journalists and a bunch of like MDs and stuff, especially
Yeah.
during pandemic. I was following a bunch of people in the medical
Information
community.
gathering. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But now I can't trust Twitter for any type of news. I mean, I still follow the people I follow,
Yeah,
but I don't look at anything suggested to me because it's
I agree.
insane.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is insane. You can't. It's completely unreal. It's gone from being somewhat reliable to completely unreliable. So yeah,
completely
it has to just
unreliable.
be sort of a place to entertain. Because your background is pharmacy, do you have like what's your relationship with medicine, Michelle? Like, are you one of those, I don't believe in big pharma. I won't ever take a medicine and my kids can't, like, what do you, or are you somewhere in the middle?
I am definitely in the middle. I think I definitely think modern medicine is amazing
Mm-hmm.
and it saves lives. And when
Mm-hmm.
I worked at the hospital, I was in like the ICU. Like the ICU is on 24 hours.
It's
And
incredible.
and that's what, as a night pharmacist, you're mainly providing meds for the ICU and the emergency department, and then like missing meds for the rest of the floors, but everyone
Sure.
else is just sleeping. And so I know that modern medicine saves lives, and I think it's amazing.
Yeah, I agree with
But
you. Yeah, but
um,
yeah.
but I also did, when I graduated from pharmacy school, I actually thought I was gonna go into drug information and work for a drug company,
Mm-hmm.
and so I did a residency at a drug company. So half of it was at Stanford doing clinical stuff, and the other half was at a drug company. And when I was at the drug company, I was like, "Whoa, so some of this stuff is true
Right.
that people say
Yeah.
about big pharma, and
Yeah.
it is a profit-driven machine." And so
Yeah.
I think I see both,
Me
but I
too.
definitely, if I'm sick and I have some terrible disease, I am going to
Get
a
the help you need.
I'm gonna get treatment. I'm gonna try to get it at the best place I can, and I will also kind of look into other modalities,
At the same time.
at the same time, but
Hell
I
yeah.
definitely trust modern medicine.
Yeah, no, I'm in the same spot. I mean, that was for me kind of the whole thing with vaccines or
Mhm,
whatever. Like I'm gonna listen to doctors I trust
mhm,
ahead of obviously a pharmaceutical company
mhm,
and then go from there. Yeah, do we have too many antibiotics given out too freely? For sure. Are there
mhm.
other drugs given out too freely? For sure. But will I
Yeah.
stockpile Xanax for the rest of my life? God forbid I have a panic attack. Hell yeah. Like I don't believe in needless suffering.
Mhm,
And I also know, like, watching my father's illness, my father had cancer, and he should have died way sooner than he did. And modern
mhm,
medicine kept him alive longer.
mhm,
So, right. And um, and you can sort of know what, again, like everything else we're talking about, what works for you and what doesn't. It was pretty amazing to watch. Like my whole life, I have known that I don't even know why I know it, but like narcotics don't really agree with me. They never
mhm,
have. Alcohol also doesn't agree with me. It never has. And it's not like I'm cool, I'm sober kind of thing, though I think sobriety is way cool. It's really physiologically like
mhm.
wheat doesn't agree with you, gluten doesn't agree with you, like alcohol doesn't agree with me, and narcotics don't work, but they make me crazy. They don't dull the
Mhm.
pain, they just make me insane. And my daughter at 10 years old had broke her what's the big longest bone? The tibia, the fibia, the tibia,
The femur? I
the
don't know.
femur, whatever's
Yeah.
the longest, biggest bone in her leg. She was just ice
Yeah.
skating gone bad because she didn't really know how to skate. And
Was it her thigh bone?
it was her whole leg. It was like a
Oh
crazy
my
break. Yeah,
gosh.
she was in a cast from her pelvis down her whole leg. And they gave her morphine in the hospital and it made her have the falls. Like it didn't take away her
Oh.
pain, it just kept making her feel like she was falling. And
Mhm.
when my father was sick, he couldn't tolerate any. I found this like so interesting that he Tylenol and Advil, that's what he took because he had like maybe entirely 4 doses of tramadol and it made him feel insane. Like and even
Mhm.
when I broke my ribs this summer, the pain was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Like
Mhm.
felt like a radiated hot knife was being poked
Oh.
into me at random. Like that was the pain. And every doctor was like, you need a real pain med. So finally one night I said, I'll try tramadol. Fine. You're all like, it's a narcotic light. I
Mhm.
was crawling around my bed. There was no comfort for me. There was forget about just diminishing the pain. That didn't happen.
Yeah.
Crawling like, and it was so like validating in a way. I mean, I felt bad for my dad, but to see how it's real.
Yeah,
Like
it's like there's
you have to
probably a
know
genetic
yourself
component for you.
100%. So
Yeah.
you have to do your own research sometimes also with medication, and we shouldn't do anything blindly. You have
Yeah.
to know it's going to be kind of good for you. But
Right.
when people poo poo the whole industry, I'm like, well, the lifespan used to be 32. So what
Mhm.
aren't you happy that most people live till 77 plus? Like, isn't that a
Yeah.
better option with some of the chemistry that we have?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is so easy to, I think, just say, "Oh, big pharma is terrible," but they
I
did
get the
come up with these
problems.
life-saving
Yeah,
vaccines in
actually.
record time,
Yeah.
you
Like
know?
actually.
Yeah.
Right. And people still don't want to believe that, and I believe in freedom to choose certain things, but please don't choose to make my family sick. That's all.
Yeah.
That's just the only thing I'm asking. But I think that also why I like how you cook and what you do is that it's all to me it makes sense. And nothing that you say kind of makes my spine tingle. Nothing that you do you know what I mean? Like nothing that you're telling me to do is somehow off-putting or scary or weird or like I think it might backfire because it's all just normal eating food.
Well, thank you. Because I think what this stems from is I am such a skeptic about things.
Yeah.
And it's really funny because I have this good friend that I just talked to this morning who I joke is like a golden retriever because she always thinks the best of everybody and she thinks
Oh,
everyone is fabulous.
oh,
And then
she's so
I'm the
lucky.
one that is so skeptical. I'm
Yeah,
like,
me too.
are you sure this person doesn't seem that great to me? And then I'm the one that has to come back later and say, I apologize. This person is actually really awesome. And
That is
so
so good. Yeah.
and so I think I do come at things always with like I'm very wary and very skeptical,
Yeah.
but I feel very positive about things. So it's
Yes.
kind of a weird I'm kind of a weird paradox that way.
Yeah. How are you doing with the college search? You have a senior and then a sophomore?
A freshman. So
Okay,
he's
fresh.
the
Okay, that's
freshman
good.
totally doesn't care.
Yeah, at
The
all.
senior is, it's like December. So it's like
Yeah.
all the applications are kind of
In.
barreling in.
Oh,
It's hard because college applications, it's so different from when we were kids.
so different. And
So different.
the blessing for me is that I'm incompetent. So I couldn't help my kids.
Yeah.
Because I'm incompetent. Where it's like, do you remember we hand wrote everything
Yeah.
first and
Yeah.
then
Or we
there was a
typed it.
typing? Yeah,
Yeah.
like on an actual, I don't even
Yeah.
know, and printed it and
Yeah.
sent it. There was
Yeah.
no
And I didn't
click.
even think twice about,
Yeah,
like, essays or anything,
not
and
the
I
way they
think I
do.
only applied to maybe 4 schools total.
4 to 6. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Whole
3 of
different
them were
thing.
UCs, so it was, like,
Uh-huh.
1 application.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but now it's so crazy competitive, and
Yeah.
it's just so in some ways, so arbitrary. So what we have told Owen over and over again is that just cast a wide net, and wherever you end up, you will be happy.
Yeah, and he will. I mean, I think that's
Yes.
like it's a painful it's a whole I know kids that got into their first choice and were
Yeah.
miserable, kids that got into
Yeah.
their second choice and were thrilled once they were there. It's
Yeah.
like it's still a crapshoot no matter what, because that's how life kind of is. But man, the stakes seem so high when they apply.
Yes, and he goes to a public school here that is, like, the number 1 public school in
Right.
California, and so
Right.
it's a very pressure cooker
Yeah.
school right in the heart of Silicon Valley,
Yeah.
and so we've just tried really hard to just try to minimize as much of that external stress as possible,
Yeah.
but it's hard when all your peers are being pushed in the opposite
And
direction.
also, you guys are so smart. Like my kids, they didn't feel the same. Like Jacob always wanted to, he knew he had his trajectory in his head
Your kids
from
ended up at
sixth grade.
amazing places.
They did. But Raquel, like she ended up at Michigan because they had a great music school and she could go for music and then be
Which is amazing.
mainstreamed.
Michigan is amazing.
It was amazing. It was, but it wasn't because like I went to Tufts and Tufts was my reach. Like I was
Tufts
not.
is amazing.
Yes, but it wasn't my, but it was everyone else's safety school. At that
Oh,
time, it was like
yeah.
all the kids that wanted to go to Harvard but didn't get in went to Tufts. And I was like, I got into Tufts by like the skin of my like there was it was like a gift. I was like, wow, and I didn't even love it. I did not love college. And so and Jacob always knew like he built his life around going where he wanted to go. He had a plan, which
Mhm.
is so weird because as I said before,
Yeah.
I didn't become type A until like last year. So it's an interesting thing to see. But with you guys, you're both so highly educated that I don't know. I feel like
If anything,
Owen
I
knows
think
he's going. Has he will get into one of those kind of schools and
I don't know. We've
knows from
actually
that.
I think for us,
Yeah.
we have seen like I worked really hard. Like I had a really miserable, I think, high school experience because I was like, I was always trying to work really hard academically. But I think now when we've seen other people in our peer group who worked
Yes.
really hard and ended up at like all these top schools, and I look at their lives now and I'm like, wow, you guys are pretty miserable.
Right.
You guys have golden handcuffs,
Right.
but you guys are miserable. And then I see other people who like went to state schools or did their own thing or didn't even finish college, and they're all so happy and
Yes.
successful and they've done
Yes.
amazing things.
Yes.
And so we've just told our kids, look, if you find something that you love and are passionate about, I mean, hopefully you can make some money doing that,
Yeah.
but that is what you should try to pursue, and
Yeah.
don't just try to get into a school because you think that you have to
No.
go to this school because it
Healthier what
makes
you're
no
doing.
difference. I
Yeah,
know
it doesn't.
so many miserable people that went to, like, Harvard
Of
and
course.
Stanford
Oh
and
my
stuff
God.
like
So
yeah,
many. So the
yeah.
list is long. I agree with you. You're
And
right.
that's why these people just always, whenever they can, they drop where they went to school. Like, nobody cares 30 years later where you went to college, you know?
No, they really don't. I mean, that's yeah, I like to unimpress people.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Well, how are you feel by the before we let you go, are you okay with us going to college? How's that going to be? Because you like your kids.
Yeah, no, I do. I'm excited to see what he does. Henry is actually the parent that is I think more similar to you. Is like, "Oh, I'm so sad. Like this might be
So
our last
sad.
Thanksgiving."
Oh, so
And
sad. The
he's
worst.
very um very sentimental and he's like thinking of all these lasts and he's like, "Oh, we have to do one trip this summer." I'm like, "We'll
Oh,
still do trips with them after."
yeah, they're just going
Um
to college. Yeah.
yeah. But I don't know, I'm actually
Mm.
kind of excited for this phase, the empty
Aw.
nest phase too,
Yeah. Yeah, it's
because I'm like, it's kind of freeing.
yeah,
So
no, I haven't felt that, but I am working on it. I'm working
yeah.
on feeling that. I
Well,
miss
does
my kids
Keith feel
terribly.
that
Yeah.
way? So
I
maybe
think
I'm the
Keith,
Keith.
yeah, I think Keith has, yes, the two of us, some, look, when they're, obviously they're home now because of my losing my dad,
Yeah.
they're here. And that's just the best thing, not the losing my dad part, like the fact that they're
Yeah.
here has really saved my sanity. I don't think I could, and they grew up next door to their grandfather. So their relationship was much closer than sort of the typical grandparent grandchild dynamic.
I know when I
Um,
learned that, I was like, "That sounds amazing that
well,
you
except for
live
the
next to
heartbreak.
your sister," and,
Yeah.
like,
We're all gonna move and the heartbreak is too much,
oh.
but it's really hard.
Mhm.
But it's a lot. But my kids, when they're not here, my anxiety gets out of control. So that's what's compromised the joy of empty nesting is the worrying about
Mhm.
are they okay? So if I can get over that hurdle, and I suppose at some point I will,
Mhm.
then I think I'll like it a lot more because Keith and I still like each other
Mhm.
27 years in. So I would hope that we can ultimately have some fun down the road. I think that's because I mean it's so trite to say and typical like life is precious, but like it really is.
Yeah,
Like
it
you get
is.
one go, you get one go. So like find your way to having a good time.
No, I totally echo
Yeah.
everything that you say. It's true.
Yeah.
Like you gotta it's Henry, I think sometimes worries about like things. I'm like, no, we can't worry about those things.
Yeah.
Like
It's good if one of you is calmer, at least. But you'll see, Michelle, when they actually leave, like
I
when Owen
know.
actually leaves, it's like it's like that baby, like he's a baby. Now he's in the whole
Yeah.
world out there. And
Yeah.
like, how does
No,
that happen?
I'm sure I'm gonna fall apart when he like, I think I always have kind of this tough exterior, but even, like, at my wedding, everyone was so surprised that I was just, like, bawling up there, and
Oh,
they're like, "Wait, who is this person?"
right.
And so I'm sure when
Right. She has a heart. Yeah. No, I
Yes,
think it's very, very
exactly.
sweet. You will, I think you'll find, and then you'll be, and then luckily, you and Henry seem really in sync. And I love that you guys collaborate well together. That's lucky. Keith and I would kill each other. That would not work. We do very well on the couch together. We do very well sleeping in the same bed. We're cozy people. So
Uh-huh.
that work, but working on a project would not, a professional project would never work. Oh my God, no. Mm-mm, mm-mm. We would clash
I
like
think what
crazy.
works the reason why it works for the 2 of us is we care about different things.
Maybe
And
that's
so
it.
he's very passionate about how things look, and I'm
Right.
very passionate about how it tastes, and we
Yes.
don't overlap on
Yeah.
things we
Yeah.
care about.
That makes sense. All right. I've kept you long enough. You need
No,
to
it's so
follow.
much fun.
I'm
I could
so
keep
glad.
chatting with you all day.
Oh, I'm so happy about that. You have to follow Michelle Tam at Nom Nom Paleo everywhere. Check out nomnompaleo.com. Buy all of the books, please. Be sure to share this episode. If you like it, download, share, like. That's how I get to keep doing this show. And yeah, thank you for being on.
No, it was my pleasure. I love chatting with you. I feel like we're already friends. Like, I
I
followed you
know.
for so long. I feel
That's
like
what
we're already
happens.
friends.
If you
Yeah.
DM enough with somebody and you kind of connect, it is real. Because I've met people in person that I've met on the internet and they're totally my friends. And
Yeah.
there's that moment where you're like, wait a minute, we're actually friends. Like this almost like, how does this internet thing work? But like it
Yeah.
works, it can work. Yeah. So thank you for listening and I will be back tomorrow.